Oh, you can't hear that at all.
Nope.
Let's try getting my audio right. Okay, here we go again. You are listening to the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast, episode 272.
Welcome to season 6, episode 272 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is December the 11th, 2016. I'm Matthew Bean Furlo, and being the first American to orbit Earth is my brother, James Furlo.
Yeah, that's right. John, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made his last revolution around the sun. Whatever. Yeah, it is a bummer.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to hearing some of the what's it called, the biographies and stuff about the dude. And it's like multi-time senator, which is a pretty big deal just in and of itself, and a major war hero flying tons and tons of different missions. Actually, one of his last missions, he got into a dogfight and took down 3 Soviet MiGs. And the question was, what was scarier, that dogfight or being the first American to orbit the Earth? You're like,
yeah, he's seen some things, that's for sure.
Right. Was
he any good as a senator? I don't even know.
He was a multi-turn senator, so I'm assuming he was good enough.
Okay.
They kept voting him back in. It's pretty good.
Yeah, sign. I feel like he kind of like that was a gimme, but
it took him 3 tries to win.
Oh, okay.
So it was a bit of a struggle, and yeah, but that's pretty amazing dude. And basically set off a giant explosion and exploded him into space.
Speaking of dogfighting in space,
yes,
got your tickets for Friday?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm all geared up. We're doing the IMAX deal.
Nice.
Getting into it. So for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, obviously Star Wars episode.
They know exactly what we're talking about.
Which are you all geared up?
I am, yep, and I even managed to pull another family in with us, so it will be a blast with blasters. Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. I'm excited for it. We got a babysitter. It's all lined up.
Oh man, I hope it's good. They aren't removing the review embargo until whatever that day is, or like Wednesday.
Really?
Man, yeah, it might be Tuesday, but it's like they're you're reading tea leaves when you're trying to figure out like what it means by when they end the embargo on movies. But it's generally speaking, it is a bad sign when they wait till the very end to open up the embargoes, unless there's a really surprising twist in the movie, in which case I'm ruining this because I'm revealing it to you all. But then the reason why they do that is because they're like, no, we don't want anything to get out, and we're just the embargo is about as they're like, don't worry, there'll be word of mouth. People know this movie's coming. It's fine. We don't have to worry. We're better off like holding back and letting people be pleasantly surprised by things that they didn't see coming, as opposed to getting reviews out there like crazy early on. And
yeah, I get that sense like with episode 7, they pretty much did everything. Like
Right.
here's everything about the movie except for, obviously near the ending there. Um, and that managed, at least I wasn't actively trying to find out information, so I didn't find out about it. But I don't know, maybe this one they're trying something a little different. And like you said, right, it's you can almost, you could do too much. Like I feel like for episode 7 it was appropriate for it to just be like, to everyone was like, the Disney machine is running,
Right.
and this one it feels less that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that's like, I wonder if that feels that it's on purpose. They're trying to keep that main line like something special and unique
Well,
and
I'm gonna say,
interesting.
I know that the advertising campaign for the Avengers movies is way different than it is for the individual movies, and I think that's incredibly intentional because, like you said, it keeps the giant movies special, even though from like a budget perspective and how much money they make, they're not really
and
that different.
Storyline.
Yeah, but they're these completely, yet the marketing campaign and how they, how much they put it in your face and how early they go about releasing reviews and stuff, completely different. And
it's probably one of those, it's like you said, from an actual product standpoint, it costs the exact same amount, except for the marketing and sales side of it, where like with the Avengers, they expect more people to go watch it to make more money. Therefore, they're willing to spend more money on marketing, and therefore it seems bigger.
Yeah, this is a super rough rule of thumb, but the rule of thumb is generally that the whatever they spend on the movie, you double that. That's what they spend on marketing and advertising. And so if it's which can be a pretty big difference. Like, I don't know. It's interesting stuff. Definitely worth talking about. But we will probably talk about it more next week, I suppose. Instead, this week, we'll talk about what we talk about every week, which is technology and the continuing corporate opera. And by that, we mean the soap opera of corporations' dealings back and forth, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course, the technology they're developing. But before we get into the heart of the show, James got a short disclosure he's got to throw our way.
Yeah, I founded HPI, and I work for them. However, I do not represent them or any of their opinions.
Nice. Just throwing it out there. If you want to follow us throughout the week, and we'll put pictures on Instagram and tweet stuff. Not as much as I should, but I do. My Twitter is at Matthew D. Furlo, and my Instagram is nextwigan4. If you want to contact us ever, me in particular, that's a great way to do it. But if you want to contact James,
let's see. Twitter is probably the easiest, and I have people reach out to me on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and it's James Furlo on all of them.
All over the place. Nice. Also, if you want to know more about everything we talk about on the show today, any of the articles, clicks, links, whatever, videos, that sort of thing, it's all going to be at furlobros.com. If we do any giveaways, it'll be at furlobros.com. If we,
You mean like this week?
Yeah. Yes. Specifically. Anytime we give things away like we're giving them away this week.
So we've kind of buried this one, but yeah, we're doing a giveaway. So Matthew has looked at and reviewed the Google Home, and now we're giving it away. So if you go to multiple places, furlobros.com/272, you'll see a big link there that says Furlo Bros giveaway. You can also just go to straight furlobros.com/giveaways/Google Home, and you can check it out. But yeah, we're doing a giveaway.
Yeah.
Go get it. It's yours, free.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I was overly meticulous to make sure that this thing is in crisp condition. You can't even tell that it was open, except for the tape's gone. But I was really careful about removing the tape so that it looks good.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's good. Good stuff.
So I guess we'll just jump right into this, huh?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. I want to open it up with an easy one. It's by The Guardian, and it's called Rocket Men, Why Tech's Biggest Billionaires Want Their Place in Space. I don't know if you know that, but there's a couple billionaires who want to go to space. I don't know what
And
that was.
they're jealous of John Glenn.
I know, right? We're just keeping that theme going, I guess. Yeah, super, super interesting that there's a lot of billionaires that are interested in space. Elon Musk is one you may or may not have heard of. Let's see here. Jeff Bezos, when he's not making stores, he's making rocket ships because that's how he rolls. Which is not him. I get it. But anyways, he's funding things. But they're not the only ones. Richard Branson with
Right, he's been
Virgin. What is it? It's not Virgin Atlantic.
Galactic.
There we go. I'm like, that sounds familiar, but that's not right.
Yeah.
So he's one. And then Paul Allen is the other guy who has Spaceship 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then finally there's which let's see. Oh, and then there's the fifth one, the crazy Russian entrepreneur Yuri Milner, who, by the way, is named after Yuri Gagarin, who was the first man in space.
Huh.
How about that for kind of sweet? And yeah, so they're all doing different things. So we've talked a lot about SpaceX and Musk and how he thinks that the world's going to die and therefore we need to go to Mars, and interplanetary living is the only way to live, in his opinion. And so that's what he's doing. And as we talked about, things like Tesla and Solar City are designed to give us more time to get to Mars because he's concerned about that, and to fund trips to Mars ultimately. And so that's his thing, and that's why he wants to go. Jeff Bezos, he has a very different reason. He views space today like, I would probably say like almost like the electricity wars between Edison and Tesla, where it's the foundational steps to what will eventually lead to something the equivalent of the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, right. You're just like, all right, let me wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
And so his whole thing is like, he doesn't necessarily want to go to Mars outside of that's cool. And he's even gone as far as to say, because we have photos, we've had satellites go around our galaxy, right? I always got to get the size
just
right.
Solar system.
There we go. I'm like, see, there's a universe, there's galaxies, solar systems. It's big out there. Anyways, he goes, we've looked all around. He's like, Earth is awesome. It's the best of all the worlds. Like, we should try to stay here and instead move things that are hurting the Earth off of it. So, for example, he wants all manufacturing to be done in space.
All right. I like that.
And that's where he sees it as, if we can figure out how to do that, if we can mine other planets for raw materials, process them and combine them in space before shipping them back home to Earth. I mean, like, talk about outsourcing.
Right, yeah.
He goes, that would be better. And that would, again, help preserve Earth because we'd be adding things to it, not taking away from it.
And that's honestly not as crazy. Like, that might sound really, really laborious and crazy, but it's not necessarily, because it's like, one thing we know about asteroids is they tend to be very resource rich. They have a lot of rare metals in them. And you might be thinking, well, how do we get them back to Earth? Well, it's really easy. They're already just floating out there. Like, there's no gravity fighting against you. So if you can get a robot out there that just drills and then kind of chucks it back at Earth with a little bit of propellant, then boom, you're on your way. And it's actually would be relatively energy what's the word I'm looking for? Not very energy intensive, unintensive. And to get stuff back to Earth, and not to mention the fact that there is stuff out in the solar system that is incredibly rare on Earth and valuable. For example, helium-3 or Trillium. Try helium. But it's an isotope of helium that is insanely rare on Earth and very common on the moon's surface, and it is really advantageous when doing fusion experiments and trying to get a sustainable fusion reaction. And one of the big things that they talk about when they talk about fusion reactors is if it's possible to build if we ever figure out how to build a fusion reactor, a sustainable one that can act as a power source, the best thing for us to do would be to power it using this isotope of helium, H3, and really only going to be able to get it on the moon. So there are huge implications for being able to manufacture and mine outside of Earth.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so he doesn't necessarily see Amazon as being that company that ultimately does that, but being a company that gets it closer to being done. And he talks about he expects other startups and entrepreneurs to literally build on top of his rockets in the same way that people have built off of previous infrastructure to get ultimately the internet. And that's his that's his thing.
Okay. I can buy it. It's pretty good.
Yeah. It talks a little bit about Richard Branson as well, and they're just like, he just likes space. I don't know.
he's rich and weird.
One of the premier or well-respected head of NASA kind of guys went around and spent a lot of time with each of these different guys, just kind of letting them pick his brain type of stuff. And essentially, he came back from Richard Branson and was like, he has stars in his eyes. He's just like pumped about it.
That's awesome.
He wants to take people up. He thinks that it's his is really more about like space is cool. It's not about productivity. It's not about expanding our world, if you will.
Right.
Which I don't know. We'll see how that works out for him. And then, which I guess it's both. Okay, so it's Paul Allen and Richard Branson are working together. Sorry, I thought they were separate at first, but no, they're working together. They're the ones who are doing Spaceship 2 at the moment, and they've got people signed up like Tom Hanks, Ashton Kutcher, Leonardo DiCaprio. They all paid about $250,000 to do their little suborbital fly around the world, John Glenn style.
That's enough
stuff. Yeah, dude. How about that? And then I thought this was cool. Like Yuri Milner.
He's the one doing the postage stamp stuff, right? He's trying to get to another solar system.
Yes. They didn't describe it this way, but he's invested $100 million, which where did he get his money from? I don't know. It was a little dubious. I probably should figure that out. Anyways, they're researching lasers to fling tiny robots towards the stars at 1/5 the speed of light.
Right. Yeah. They're
so tiny robots.
Yeah. Little
through space.
Yep. And they're going to use giant laser arrays to.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's pretty interesting. And then it goes on to talk about how often there's more hype than reality with these guys. And they're trying to assess, like, is this just ego or like what's going on with this? And they're just like, no, they see an opportunity and they have the funds. And a part of it is that childhood dream of space. And they grew up in a time when people like John Glenn were doing what they were doing, going out in the space, and they expected, like, all right, we've gone around the world. Sweet. We've gone to the moon. Sweet. Now we're going to Mars and we're building bigger ships. And it was like, we're not. maybe we'll send unmanned satellites. Maybe we'll build the International
It,
Space Station. And
it's very interesting that that was one thing that was I was very was made more aware of this week. The idea that it's one of those things where like I kind of knew, but I guess maybe I'd forgotten or never really understood. But this idea that these astronauts were superstars, and they were larger than life. They were like the heroes of children and adults alike, you know, because they were doing these incredibly dangerous, incredibly, or you know, perceived to be incredibly dangerous, difficult things, and they were going to go into the next frontier, you know, and
there's
yeah,
awesome. There's a movie on Netflix. Let me put it that way. That kind of dramatizes that phase in history, and I mean it's all actors that we all know and love. But playing these, you know, it's what is it?
what's it called?
Buzz Aldrin, and no, I think he was a little bit later. But it was John Glenn, Andrew Shepard, and some other, you know, some of the Gemini product, you know, Gemini guys.
Yeah.
And it follows them around, and it's interesting, yeah, because they're definitely like anywhere they go, they are superstars. And you know, it's just absolutely crazy.
You're
But
talking
at the
about
end
the
of
right
day,
stuff, right? Correct.
maybe is that a really like
1983 American epic historical drama film that was adapted from Tom Wolfe's best-selling 1979 book of the same name. But yeah, it's
yeah, that's definitely it. Ed Harris is in it. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. That's the stuff. The right stuff. It's on Netflix. Or at least it was. It's really kind of like, oh boy. But it's funny. At one point in time, there are these pilots. It's fun to watch them go all through the testing, and they're testing their endurance and whatever. And but at the end of the day, they're like, you're just in a tin can hurling through space, just like along for the ride. And these are all like test pilots, right? And they had to fight just to get a window into the capsule. And
so they could actually see it.
Yeah. Because at first they're like, no, you're not. You're literally just riding along, like, so we can say we put a human in space. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, part of the movie is like they're all stars, and American legends. You know, and people want to interview them and ask them questions, and it's like the first one to go up, huge deal. Of course, then it's funny, like after they go up like 3 times, then it's kind of like, okay, cool, done. You know?
Yeah, we had such an emphasis on making it, you know, never losing an American in space. That was such a like a high-minded goal of NASA, because it really separated the Soviet program from the American program, that NASA had never lost an astronaut in space. That they made it so safe, it almost, like, the allure of the danger and just the breathtaking nature of the projects weren't scary because people didn't die. and you're like, it almost, it's this weird, it kind of took the superstar nature aspect away from it in some way, because it wasn't this, they were just, all of a sudden they were just nerds. And you're like, yeah, but they were incredibly physically fit, incredibly smart, just, you know, peak humanity sort of people. And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting it's interesting to watch America's fascination with astronauts rise and fall, and they're still impressive, but they're not near. It's not like it once was at that moment. And I guess,
and it's all these guys, these billionaires, right, grew up with that.
That's what I was going to say. That's the point, is that they were all children when these guys were superstars. They were giants. They weren't, you know, it's like they have this memory of,
holy cow, the next wave of billionaires are going to be into football. This is bad.
But it's, you know, but I don't know. It is interesting. It's an interesting development. Oh.
Yeah, it's cool. Hey, you know, at the end of the article, they're like, you know what? If they're doing it for selfish reasons or whatever, like either way, we're going to space. It's all good.
Yeah, I can abide this. You know who's not going to be sending us to space though? Which CEO is going to fail doing that?
No, which one?
His name is Ronnie Abovitz, and he is the
You've
CEO
been
of.
watching too many Gilmore Girls. Is that it? Rory.
Yeah, all right.
It's a shame that I know that.
If you hadn't said it, I wouldn't have remembered. But yeah, no. So Ronnie Horror or Abovitz, not jeez. Anyways,
I like Ronnie Horror. That's pretty good.
He's the CEO of Magic Leap, and Magic Leap is a company that we've talked about on and off again. They have this really cool technology that can project light into your eyes. They've had these demo videos that they've shown off that are like that where the whole idea is you put on this headset and then like your eyes can't tell the difference between what you're seeing and like what is being projected into your eyes by the headset and what's coming through just the rest of the world. And they were talking about how they actually had to, like, it was freaking people out, and so they had to adjust the settings to kind of give the fake images a glow so that you kind of knew the difference between them. And it sounded amazing. They've raised $1.4 billion,
Wow.
which is a lot of money. They have investors include Google, Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, Silicon Valley juggernaut Andreessen Horowitz. I keep coming back to the fact that if you've been listening to the show long enough, I think this is a dumb company. I don't know how they get their money. I don't know what's going on. I just had this feeling that it all sounded like talk and just you never actually got a demo. People didn't show it on stage. They were talking about and showing these like demo teaser videos, but never really came through on the promise of what it's capable of. Turns out the original demo video that got people really, really excited, where they were like, they're playing a game in an office building, complete CGI, just completely fake. Like it was an idealized, like it wasn't shot on demo equipment. It was, they got like a really high resolution camera, and then they literally had Weta, the guys who did Lord of the Rings, do the animation for it.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, and originally they had claimed that Weta was involved just supplying the 3D models that then were projected onto it, but that's not true. They just completely did it. This like cool eye projection technology. I guess it actually is pretty neat, and we've kind of talked about like they people finally figured out what it was, because they weren't telling anybody what it was they were building except for these investors. And Wired did an article earlier this year, and they talked about how the technology works and kind of what it is and why it's different than what what Microsoft is doing with the HoloLens, correct? And the HoloLens, because it's a similar type of technology where you're looking around the real world, but there's extra images being put on top of it. And I guess the problem was that although like Magic Leap's technology, it directly projected the light into your eyes. Your eyes couldn't tell the difference, and the big trick was it was all about how your eyes focus. It deals with focus better than Microsoft's technology, which sounds pretty cool and pretty interesting if you could get that working. The problem is the one actual working prototype that they have is this giant headset that's not mobile at all.
Sweet.
And they have not at all been able to figure out how to miniaturize it. So now it's just it sounds like they're like the only way that they're going to come up with a shippable product is to build literally the same thing that Microsoft is doing. So it has no advantage over it, except it doesn't have all of the software and engineering prowess that comes along with being Microsoft. And it's pretty amazing. Especially since you can buy Microsoft's prototype, their HoloLens, now for $3,000. I mean, it's expensive, but you can buy it, the developer kit, and start working on it. Magic Leap.
Well, the best part is that one that you can buy is already 1 or 2 generations old compared to what's inside of Microsoft's labs.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's just...
That was the one that they felt comfortable, like, everything's working on it, we can sell it.
Yep, yeah. Yeah, and
Wow, I'm not
it's
surprised at all,
I
but it's
know.
kinda nice to hear it too.
I'm going to say, yeah, finally, it's like, or finally feels like we're getting to the truth of the situation where this company is just a total disaster and that they're really good at selling investors. It sounds like that's their real talent is getting investors to give them enormous piles of cash. And the only thing that I can think is that they legitimately had something really neat, and Microsoft had been kind of keeping they Microsoft had done a very good job of keeping their HoloLens stuff quiet, and it allowed Magic Leap to get some serious investors because they were like, "Oh, we got all sorts of things that are going to make this awesome," and there was nobody else that was trying to do the mixed reality scanning, like scanning the rest of the world and doing all sorts of inside out tracking and stuff. And because that's the funniest part about this to me is that like the actual projection equipment on Microsoft's HoloLens is super easy to understand. They're just refracting light through an opaque or through a translucent screen. It's standard technology. They've been using it anywhere where you get heads-up displays. They've been using this type of technology forever. It's not that impressive for how the image technology works, but that means that it's really easy to build because the technology's there and has been there for a long time. What Microsoft has really been revolutionizing is how do you do motion tracking? Where they just have a couple of cameras on the headset and all the motion tracking is done internally. It's a really big deal that nobody else has been able to ship a product of that quality for. It's huge. They're making custom silicon chips to do hardware acceleration on it. Like there's all sorts of nutty stuff that Microsoft is doing on that end. Not to mention the fact that they're building their whole Windows holographic, which is this entire operating system built around this type of interface. And Magic Leap not only is not doing motion tracking, they don't have an operating system. They're not trying to work with Microsoft's operating system, and they can't even get their projection lenses working. They're like sophisticated, cool stuff. I just look at this company and I'm like, man, they got so much money from these giant companies and they're going to just fall so short of ever being anything. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, I'd be willing to put with the proper odds, I would be willing to put money on the idea that they never ship a product.
Whoa.
And I'm like, I'd go like 4-1. Like that's, I'm not, I think they've got so much money and there's so much pressure. They have to ship something, even if it's pathetic. But just my gut on this company is that they're so pathetic, they'll never even ship a product. Their investors are going to come in and say, look, we want our money back. You guys are just the worst.
As an investor, like, I don't know. It's either like they're actively having conversations about this, and it's like, well, they've got my money, and there's nothing I can do about it, but you're not getting any more, type of thing.
Yeah.
And they're just shaking their heads when these articles come out. But they're also not going to say anything because they might get lucky.
Right, yeah.
And they themselves don't want to be like, oh, yeah, we made a bad investment. They're going to distance themselves, right, and hope that they're never actually mentioned as an investor anymore. And, that could be one thing. Or it genuinely is like, I always seen the product, it's good. This information doesn't know what they're talking about, and they've got enough money, we're not going to worry about it. Let Microsoft think it has no problem. It's possible.
Yeah, that's possible. It's also possible that I could orbit the Earth tonight, but it seems
my guess is at the time, like you said, he's great at selling the dream,
yeah,
hyping things up. He probably had little bits and pieces of demos that got people excited, and it was all before the HoloLens came out.
Right.
And my guess is that if he went out and tried to raise that money today, it would be a very different story.
Right. Well, and I think at the time Google hadn't even come out with Cardboard yet when they were starting to when they made their investment in Magic Leap, if I remember correctly, or it was like right around the same time, which Cardboard was as soft a first step as a company could possibly take. They literally said, hey, here's some cardboard, turn it into a VR headset. One of their employees invented it, and they were like, and the company was like, hey, this is kind of neat. We might build a little more software and support this kind of, and now it's turning into a full featured part of their new platform. We're going to do VR. Awesome. Right. Facebook bought Oculus, so Oculus is now part of Facebook. And this is all prior to these giant companies. Really,
see, I think they hit it right when there was a bunch of excitement and people knew about the potential.
Right.
And so they're willing to put money behind it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's what it is everybody was looking at Oculus and said, Oculus has a little bit of potential, but I don't really see anything outside of video games. Whereas Magic Leap had huge potential in the way.
Which is what we've always said, like AR is the future. VR is just it's a halfway stop.
Yeah, and it will have advantages, but it'll always be a smaller niche. And I think that's what everybody thought, and that's why they put so much money into it. And now they're kind of taking a step back and thinking, yeah, no. Which I'm excited about because it's always felt like garbage to me. Just from the very beginning. I'm glad we're starting to get other information. And the best part about it is the CEO has been read the article and has been started tweeting and whatnot. And he's just like, it's, to a few of the grumpy mouse tech blogger writers,
that'd be
you too. Yeah, I know. You too will get to play the real thing when we ship. Yeah, I'm sure when you ship, whenever that is. For our launch, everyone, skeptics and friends alike, will be able to try Magic Leap for themselves, which it just sounds like the sort of thing you say, like you're trying to be confident.
When in the process of losing a game?
Yeah, exactly. No. I know it's the third quarter, but we're the best. This is how it felt watching the Warriors last night. It was like, I know that we're super behind and been behind this entire game, but we're the Warriors, so we're going to do awesome. And then you lose anyways because you make me sad. But they're doing good. I feel bad comparing the Warriors to Magic Leap at this point.
Yeah, that's an unfair comparison for sure.
You say in both directions. Gives Magic Leap too much credit and Warriors not enough.
Yeah, because at least with the Warriors, you're like, historically they've won. So
yes, exactly. They've ever done something worth commenting on other than raising a bunch of money.
They have come from behind like this and won. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's interesting how it's just not normal for CEOs with only the vision to what I'm trying to say. You just don't hear about this kind of stuff because they never get this big.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I guess I'm, me being mean right now. Like I know people like this, and I guess that's why like it just feels so like.
Yeah,
like this.
I mean, I know. Rag. You know what? You rag on my business, so I'm going to rag on your friends. So take this. The whole because I've had more time to think about it, but we did an interview too. You got your friends where they were like, check out these couches or furniture and, find the things that are hard to find and to decorate your room with, again, like good pieces of furniture, not IKEA pieces of furniture. And I'm like, and on one level, you're like, yeah, that's cool. I like it. But you almost got the sense they were like, we're changing the nature of shopping right now. Like the way you shop for furniture will never be the same once we come out with this. And you're like, okay. Like,
yeah, it's funny.
And then the ultimate thing was a few compromises on that ultimate dream and vision.
Right.
And, part of it's people playing ball, whatever. Like there's always reasons why, we couldn't figure out that part of the technology. We couldn't get those, partnerships in place, right? Apple TV. And it happens. And but it's that same, like you hear that same resolve and dream and vision with the startups. And that's what this guy is. He just happens to have $1.5 billion behind his comments. And everyone's kind of shaking their heads going, what in the world did he say in those meetings to get
Yeah.
those types of checks. And how do I say that?
I think that's the trick. I think it was all about timing, and I think
it's huge.
I think the timing was a giant part of it, and the fact that he got Alibaba and Google and Mark Andreessen, like the three of them. It's one of those classic. There was a movie that was made where they have like well over 100 cameos from really like big actors and actresses, and it's a horrible movie. Everybody is embarrassed to be a part of.
You're
Like,
not
it's
talking
just
about like Anchorman, are you?
no. I can't even remember the name of this movie. But it's just like it's not just it's like unsettlingly like it's meant to be unsettling, because what the writer directors like realized that they could do was they had a friend and they were like, hey, can you make a cameo in our movie? And the guy was like, yeah, I guess, just like give it a little like star power. Well, then they went to other friends who were like, hey, this guy's in the movie. Yeah. And they started just to leverage everybody else. And so it wasn't until the movie was over that and it had hundreds of cameos. So it like gave it all this weight, and then people watched it and were like, this isn't just like a poorly made movie. This is like a bad message. This is like bad for my image. Like, it just is like and when you look at, that's what I feel like happened here was Andreessen and Page and these guys all showed up, and they're like, well, Andreessen gave a bunch of money.
Well, who knows? He might have been excellent at playing them all off, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. That's what I think happened was it was obvious that he had a demo that could show them what the rest of everybody else now knows, like a year before everybody else, and got a ton of money and never turned it into a shippable product because turns out Microsoft was already way ahead of them. They just hadn't told anybody yet.
And it turns out that making hardware is tough.
Really hard, yeah.
Yeah. You can ask all sorts of companies about this, but some would argue, like this guy in the New York Times, whatever that is, that we're entering into a winter of gadgets. And I'll be honest, I don't totally agree with this, but we're going to go with it anyways for now, and then I'll tell you why he's wrong. He's like, if you look around you, you've got companies like, we'll use Magic Leap, unable to ship, which, again, there may be some other issues involved, but, Magic Leap. Another one we're going to talk a little bit more about, Pebble is no more. Fitbit
having struggles, yeah.
Their own set of issues. GoPros can't seem to get off the ground lately. Even Jawbone has, I know, it's not fair. They make it too easy. Jawbone is struggling. Nest, we've talked a little bit about Nest and their issues despite having a very friendly parent. Just gadgets seem to be struggling. When you think about, oh gosh, I don't know, not a few years, like more than a few years back, like the thing to have were like transistor radios or the TRS 80s or the Walkman and the Game Boy and the iPods and the flips. And you remember the flip?
Yeah.
I remember I was on a Mexico mission trip, and I was talking, he was a sports reporter for the newspaper where I live, and he had a flip. He's like, man, it's awesome. I can record videos and do all this stuff, and just export it right to it. It's like, and it's high quality. It's great. And I pulled up my phone and went, me too. He's like, no. This one's nice because it's dedicated. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this one's nice because I can replay it and edit it and share it.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Yeah, whatever.
On the device.
That's cool, man. He's like, well, I've got a big battery and a lot of memory. I'm like, okay, I guess you got me there. Mine only lasts a day, and I only, but
yeah,
yeah, which tends to be good enough because I can charge it. How long do your games go for again?
Yeah,
yeah, he doesn't have a flip anymore. He uses an iPhone for literally everything. It's pretty funny. So, but that's the point, right? Is I think that's like an awesome example of what this guy talks about, because he goes into like, well, what happened? And because he said like it's an interesting story where essentially, like, international manufacturing happened. And it actually happened a few years back, which is what proliferated all of these gadgets, because all of a sudden it became, for the most part, affordable. And over time, two things happened. Really, the first one was the gadget, as he likes to call it, happened. It goes, that thing that does everything emerged from Cupertino. And so there's that. And we have a classic picture that we took. We were Jesse and I took that, where we were cleaning out the garage, and Jesse literally had like a handful of gadgets. It was her alarm clock, her calculator. She had a flashlight. She had I'm trying to remember. There was something. She had like five or six, not just four, like five or six like different things in her hand. And she was like, yeah, I literally don't need any of this anymore. And and this was like back on like 3G days, and there was enough to recognize, oh yeah, these things aren't done, or they're not needed. Anyway, it's just absolutely crazy the amount of replacement that's happened with that. And so that happened. Obviously, there's a bunch of consolidation on that end, and then he goes in to say, like, because of this contract manufacturing, things became cheaper to produce, and you would literally have companies who would make knockoffs. Like for him, he was taking a trip to Hawaii, and he's like, it'd be kind of fun would be to have a GoPro with me to take photos and videos of stuff. Which when I went to Indonesia, the host we were with, he had a GoPro, and he took pictures of us snorkeling, and I mean, I looked at it and went, that's pretty awesome. Like, if you're doing anything water related, GoPro is the way to go. But he started looking online. He's like, all right, well, what do we got out there? Because, whatever. And he ended up buying some knockoff thing that did the exact same things as a GoPro, but cost half the price.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, it wasn't as great. The software wasn't as good, but he's like, I'm not a sports guy. I do Twitter and I take vacations, and for that, perfect, good enough. Right? They're coming out with these gadgets that are, quote, good enough, and so he's talking about how it just, we're coming into a phase where gadgets are less of a thing. Which again, that's where I kind of come back and like, I don't know if I agree with that statement, because I feel like there was, as opposed to now being a winter, I feel like there was a very short window of a golden age, maybe is the way to say it, where like you had things like Kickstarter pop up, where all of a sudden, boom, we're going to make a Pebble for you. We're going to make a smart cooler. We're going to do all this crazy stuff. And part of it's the market just figuring out, right? Like what can we do? What can't we do? And ultimately things that are successful, like the Pebble, you get big companies that come in and go, oh, we want a piece of that pie. And they have the R&D and the manufacturing and the expertise to just, quote, do it better. Yeah. And it's funny, like there's a part of me, like he talks about the Sony Walkman. Like, you do know, like Sony's not some startup company, right?
Right.
Like they are not teensy. And he just like, it's always been the case.
Yeah, and at the advent of the Sony Walkman, they already cut the Sony transistor line radios. I mean, Sony was an enormous, hyper successful company in so many ways, and by the time the Walkman came around, and it just now
he does go on to say there's a lot of tech companies that hardware is like a sideshow for them. Amazon is a great example, right? Their Kendo and their Echo. It's like they're not dependent on that at all. Google, they got their Pixel, their Home, the Nest. They're not dependent on that. Even Snap, right? They're not dependent on spectacles. There's probably a handful of companies, Samsung, Sony, Apple, HP actually falls into this category, that are dependent on hardware still. And I'm sure the more I think about it, the more it's like, dude, it is 50-50. We just like, you just don't hear like Facebook, okay, Yeah, I guess Oculus is a
It's
sideshow
it's
thing.
such a, I don't know, it's interesting. It's always fascinating to me. Like, and I think one of the big differences is it kind of depends on what you're into, because all of the giant Asian brands that we're aware of are hardware manufacturers. You
Right.
know, Panasonic, Sony, Samsung. We can keep going. I'm sure I can come up with others. Asus. Like,
Lenovo.
well, thank you, Lenovo. Yeah, there are giant hardware companies, but they all kind of build similar stuff. They build general purpose computers, whether they're laptops, desktops, phones, stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's kind of where we think of them. And the thing about what we're actually seeing, if I had to say, what we're actually seeing is the end, not of gadgets, but the end of like single purpose or hyper purposeful devices. And the only way to take another step forward is to say, all right, there are limitations to what GPUs can, or what CPUs can handle. Because it's like, if you, maybe this is the wrong way to break it down, but to me, it's like the CPU is this amazing thing that is really power hungry, very large, takes a lot of like support equipment, or did for a very long time. One of the reasons why the Sony Walkman existed and the Sony CD player, like all these different versions of these devices, they were all built on simpler microprocessors as opposed to a full-blown general purpose CPU. And it wasn't until you got the CPU small enough where it was a general purpose CPU with a dedicated GPU core that you got the iPhone that was this like, that had this tipping point. Especially in the realm of gadgets. So the next step to me is, it's like, well, okay, what can you do with where a smartphone isn't really like, it's not enough. A general purpose computer isn't enough. And the two obvious areas are going to be things like drones, which are highly sophisticated mechanical
Yeah.
equipment, and that's a gadget department that's doing gangbusters right now. And as dumb as it always sounds, but the whole Internet of Things thing, the advantage there, or the problem there that you're trying to solve, is that you have one phone. What if I need my phone to be in 8 different places? Well, what if we build really low powered system on a chip, general purpose CPUs, and put them in everything? And those are the sorts of gadgets that we're buying. I get the feeling that the type of gadget is changing, not the quantity or the quality. It's just,
Well, yeah, it was like that. We were reading that Andreessen article. I think that was Thanksgiving week, and his point was, he was like, we like to think there's only like 2 or 3 computer companies in the world, and you think it's Microsoft and Apple are the only 2 operating systems, and then there's a handful of hardware manufacturers, like again, HP, Lenovo, Samsung, guys like that. He's like, no, there are a ton of computer companies. Some of them happen to fly. We call them drones. Some of them
right.
happen to be on your locks. Some of them happen to, they take all these different shapes and sizes. They all have their own different operating systems. They're all computers. These
Well,
are
I can
computer
say,
companies.
they all, quote unquote, have their own operating system, and by that they mean
Run
Linux,
Linux.
Unix, and Ubuntu, like some variation of Linux. There are incredibly rare and generally unsuccessful companies that build their own operating system. Most of these, but the thing is it's
Yeah, I mean, if you even think about like Apple, right? It's built
right.
off Linux and
Yeah,
Unix.
it's got the Unix.
Anyways,
It's got the same core stuff, so you can do a lot of the dev that you can do on your Mac. Very easily translates over to Ubuntu. And the
so
trick, we say, yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I say, and the trick there is, like, we come back. It's not that these things are going away; they're just changing. And to be like, oh my gosh, gadgets are done. It's just drives me nuts. It's can you put enough processing power into these smaller form factors? That really is where the question. And that's my question, James. Can you put enough processing power into these smaller packages to make them successful on your wrist?
Uh, That's interesting. There's a part of me that, because yeah, Pebble is Dunskies, but a lot of the argument is like smartwatches are not the next big thing, which like they were never promised to be the next big thing, but they're even saying like there's initial demand spike and now it's tailing off. And it's like it's an even faster and more extreme spike than what happened with the iPad, right? Because that was kind of the thought is Apple did the iPhone, or the iPhone came out, and it grew, and now we're just finally starting to see it tail off and mature. The iPad grew crazy fast relative even to the iPhone, and then tailed off and is now in decline. And they're saying like the watch was even a faster spike, which I'm like, dude, you only have so much money. I mean, like, come on.
Yeah,
so you have to make choices. But and so they're seeing that same thing, right? There was a spike and now there's a tail off, and they're just saying people just aren't that into it, which me as someone who bought the recent one, I don't want to hear that.
You know what? They're so wrong. They're so wrong.
Okay, I feel like you're just. Are you sure you're not as biased as I am? In this situation.
I am sure of my biases. Okay, I have been an advocate for the wrist-borne computer since well before Apple ever launched their watch. I mean, like this has been a constant for me since, I'm guessing, late season 3. I've been an advocate for some form of for those of you not paying attention. That's like 2.5 years ago. Like when the Apple Watch was coming out, I couldn't do a show without talking about the Apple Watch for like a half hour. Like
just like VR.
Exactly. I was into it, and I've worn mine every day since I bought one when it first came out. So like I'm into it. But I had this experience at lunch the other day, and I remember I sat down, I had my headphones on, I was just looking around the restaurant, and this is average restaurant. Yes, I know it's in the Silicon Valley, so it does, there is bias here, and it's the multiple or the plural of anecdote is not data, as they say. But this was my one anecdote. I'm sitting there and I look around and I counted like 7 Apple Watches in the store. And I remember the feeling of, was the iPhone a success or not? Because it was a big question for quite a few years, because it was such a slow burn compared to these monumental giant companies out there. But what it really started to change for me was when, and this is like I was early 20s, but it was like people my age were frequently having smartphones. And that's when I was like, okay, something has changed. Something's different. I think you're seeing some really weird, I think that the numbers we're seeing for the watches, once you graph it over 3 or 4 years, you'll look at this time and be like, yeah, there's just some weird cyclical things going on with the nature of Apple's releases, the fact that the Apple Watch is so dominant already, and whereas like with smartphones, there was much more of a regular, the cycle was smoothed out by the fact that there were constantly new launches of new phones from different manufacturers. And
the 2-year contract helped a little bit too.
That it was a huge, I think we look at the iPhone as some sort of or the smartphone as some sort of an indicator of how this is supposed to be, and it's just so it's such an anomaly for so many reasons.
Why don't they do that? I just don't understand, and I'm going to take us slightly off track here. Why don't they do subsidized watches and computers and other stuff? I don't know. I don't get it.
I think the feeling is
I know it's called borrowing, but you could brand it slightly different and people would totally get into it.
I was going to say, I think what it is, honestly, is that it seems too obvious what they're doing with the phones. That the whole subsidy thing was because basically, you're just borrowing money and from the telephone company so you could get a better device, and they had these regular update cycles, which was good enough for them. They were making the money they wanted to make, but where they really loved it was when you didn't upgrade right away, because
I know
you kept paying the same rates that your subsidy was based on. And so now they're kind of gone to this new thing where it's like, nah, you just pay it until it's paid off, and it's becoming a little more transparent. But as it becomes more transparent, people are also starting to really understand that they're buying $1,000 phones on debt and paying it off like it were a car. It's crazy when you really like sit down. And when people start to understand what it is, it's not so obscured in your phone bill. I think it becomes kind of weird, and it's a more difficult sell with watches and tablets. I still think that this is honestly I've packed up the Google Home, and I already miss it because I miss talking to it. But I was thinking
I got to play with an Echo yesterday, by the way.
Oh man,
pretty fun.
They're cool, but honestly, I still think to if you could put all of the intelligence of the Google Home into a 3 or an LTE or even a 4G connected wristbound device, like I'd be happy. I would not need a phone. I would need that and a tablet. The tablet would sit on my desk and stuff, and all of my notifications and all my, for browsing, I'd have a small tablet. For work, I'd have a small tablet. That's what I use my phone for. But for just everything else my phone does, that like notifications, simple communication stuff. And I think that there's an entire universe of people that will want that once it's really there at a level that's doable, where you can manage the battery life, you can manage the how do you have data. But this idea of that you don't need a phone, it blows my mind when people sit there and be like, no, the phone's like this like ideal functional size. That just feels so wrong to me. It just, and I've talked about this before, and maybe I'm completely wrong, and I'm like, nobody thinks like me, but I still think the phone is the worst possible size. It's too small to be really useful, like a big screen, and it's too big to be truly mobile, because you're constantly having to like deal with it in your pockets and where does it go and stuff. It's not just always there's sort of omnipresent. And I think the real reason why the phone works so well in its form factor is because it's the battery size, the CPU size, everything just kind of goes together in this nice package at this form factor. And as batteries keep improving and we get smaller nanometer chips, so you need less power and less smaller form sizes, and all of these little things keep making improvements, you're going to find one day all the pieces are there for a watch that can really replace the phone. And then people will be like, well, this just seems like this just happened all of a sudden. Like Apple's original Apple Watch was so dumb and obviously it wouldn't work. Yeah, but it was transitionary. What's wrong with you people? How can you not say
Do you
this?
think there'll be a combination with like a Magic Leap type of thing too? That'll enable that?
With a Magic Leap?
Yeah, some AR something or other. Because screen size will always still come up as an issue.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of it, is that we're going to live in a world like
maybe that'll replace the watch.
We live more and more in a world where you'll either have screens over your eyes or you'll have screens everywhere. And that's the thing, is that it's this general purpose CPU that you take all over the place, and it means that you don't have to have computers everywhere. But that's the goal right now, is to put computers everywhere. That's what the entire silicon industry is trying to do, and they're succeeding slowly but surely. That there's a we have not even talked about Pebble or Fitbit. This is hilarious. But the idea that these devices and where they're going, what are they? What are they capable of? To me, I just sit there and I go, the idea that you'll carry a screen around in your pocket everywhere will seem laughable in 30 years. Why would you do that? That's such a bad idea. It's such a useless, you're typing with the tips of your fingers trying to carefully
laugh about. Remember when screens used to crack?
Right? Yeah. Can you believe we used to do that? That's the only thing, is I could see. I like the idea of the watch because it doesn't obscure your vision constantly. But people who need glasses to see well wear glasses all the time. So we might get to that point where instead of having screens everywhere,
need AR to see well.
Exactly. That's a legitimate alternative to the smartwatch being part of this, another step in this evolution of what we do. But I just, and the thing is, it's like as the internals of these watches become more and more sophisticated and become easier and easier for other companies to reproduce, that's when it'll return as a fashion device. Because ultimately they're general purpose CPUs. And like if you could afford 6 or 7 watches that all sort of do the bare minimum of communicating quickly with a server somewhere that does the heavy lifting of computation, then you really can have one kind of old, expensive watch that sits around for 5 years. It's like we think about our computers. How long does a computer last nowadays? 5 years? This isn't like these aren't unsolvable problems. What they require is very energy efficient, dedicated hardware in the form of watch. I don't know. And that's why it's funny, because it's like Pebble is just they're too far. They were too far ahead and too far behind at the same time. I think they were focused on the wrong things. They wanted the 7-day battery, which just Apple's proven that wasn't the big. That's not what people really wanted. What people really wanted was a beautiful screen and as ridiculous and a high quality motion or health sensors. Like that's something that Apple did. They got above the bar for very good in generation 1, and then they took it to Fitbit in generation 2. The idea that where the Apple Watch will succeed is when it succeeds as a health tracker, and then everything else is just going to be butter. That's what's going to set us apart and allow us to charge premiums. But the health tracking, GPS, high quality heart rate, can use it in the ocean. Those
customizable watch faces. Yeah,
but those are the sorts of things where Android, I'm surprised. Well, Android, I think part of the deal with the Android manufacturers is they're all taking a step back and say, look, these are expensive experiments. Let's give it a few years and figure out where it's going, and then we can.
Didn't Samsung just announce they're not refreshing their round or whatever they're calling it? Right? Was that Samsung or was that Motorola?
Motorola just announced they're not doing it.
Because they had the big round one that everyone was like, this is the best looking one of the bunch. And now they're not refreshing it. Which I think it's back to that. We're still checking it out.
Hey. Okay. Oh, 1 second. I'm getting a phone call, and I just got called twice, and I'm going to make sure that this isn't an emergency.
All right. You go on mute, and I'm going to
okay.
Double check it there. So while he's doing that, checking on his phone call, so like we talked about, Pebble's done. There's things 7-day battery life. That was pretty amazing, and I think that their color e-ink screen, we're going to see that definitely come back with Fitbit. I have on my Apple Watch right now a watch face, which it's okay. I have ideas for it to be better. I don't have an option with it outside of colors and stuff. I used to have some really, really creative watch faces that people would put together. Like the one I led the show off because it made me seem really geeky. It was a bar chart, and the left column was hours. So there was 4 bars or 12 bars. I can do math. And then the right column had 60 parts to it, and that was for the minutes. And so you could tell the time by reading the bar chart. It was super nerdy. I had one that looked like the Star Trek Next Generation touch screen that's on the Enterprise, because why not? That looks kind of cool. I don't know. There was just a bunch of, you could do some really cool things with it, and I'm gonna miss that. It'll come back in some way. Like you said, if I really missed it, I'd go Android, because that would probably allow me to do that. Is my guess.
Well, yeah,
that's a thing.
I think it's one of those things where this is you're still early in it. I still think you're early in it, and I don't think it's wrong I think Fitbit made the right decision where they said, look, we think that there's a future here.
They're taking the smarts though, not the products, right? They're Pebbles will no longer be sold. Their Kickstarter thing is returning all the money to them. They're not even continuing the support for current watches. I saw that and I was like, oh man,
Yeah, no.
that's tough.
And I think, yeah, which is a bummer if you've invested in that.
Dude, I know a guy.
ecosystem.
He when Fitbit came out with, or not this latest one, with the one before that, he bought two. And
Fitbit or Pebble?
sorry, Pebble. One for himself, and then like one for his son, and his son was like, "No, I don't want one." And so he was like,
Oh,
"Hey, you guys want a Pebble? I'll give it to you a reasonable price," and which was not at a discount; it was what he paid for it. I was like, "Dude, you take a bet like that, you got to pay the price." That,
yeah.
and I was ultimately like, "No, I'm holding out. Watch, I don't want that." I feel bad for him because he's like, he's not a. I mean, he's a. How do I want to say it? You know, he's a tech guy. He gets it. He's not a massive nerd or a maven, if you will. But I don't know. I feel bad.
I do. I feel bad too, and it's, you know, but it's one of those things where I think Fitbit is doing about as good as they can going toe to toe with Apple right now, where it's like we got a brand, we got a community, we're going to keep focused on what our brand does, what our community does, leverage that into higher prices, try to make some good profit, and set ourselves up for the next generation of devices, and, you know, keep just moving forward carefully and you know, quickly but carefully. And they bought a bunch for very cheap. They bought a bunch of expertise and intellectual property that, you know, can help them.
Yeah, that IP is going to be a big deal, I think.
Yeah,
because they're going to continue to go the route of you don't need a full blown watch, you just need a fitness tracker. They're going to go after that category,
right?
You know, and they're going to say, and it's less than $250.
Yep. And it'll be a good space to be. You know, there's really nobody else right now that's there and is succeeding. And I think as a couple of the Android developers start to back out, it'll allow one or two to kind of step in and say, look, we get it. What you really want is a high quality fitness tracker with a bunch of with sophisticated notifications and maybe a little bit more, you know, customizable screen faces and stuff.
Makes you wonder where Apple intends to go with their next version of the watch, because they clearly were like, okay, we're focused on fitness, and they'll obviously continue to make strides, and they'll be like, we're getting more accurate blood temperature, pressure, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. They're going to get more accurate at the health stuff as well. But do they then say, okay, we've conquered that, let's go focus on another area? Do they put the LTE in and go Apple Watch 3G?
Yeah.
Like they did with a certain telephonic computer, not a device, because it was a computer, let's be honest. And you know what I mean? I don't know. It just makes you wonder. Or do they triple down on the whole health tracker thing?
I think they've decided.
Yeah, you think so?
I think that's it. I think that they're going to try. What they really, really want is something that's so sophisticated, it borderline requires FDA approval in order to be sold. Like, they want to get right up to that line and stay on the unregulated side of the FDA, but they want it to be that sophisticated of a health tracker. And because I think they have accurately decided, and I think they made that decision long before they started, you know, even before they finished their first generation of device. And that's something that, like, once again, we've been talking about, like, because I remember us talking like a year before the Apple Watch came out, where it became this sudden epiphany of, like, I realized this like coded language that they were talking about, that like they're building a health tracker. That's what they're focusing on. That's what they want. And they kept hiring like health tracker people, the engineers who were into that for, you know, months and months and months. And then the original device came out and it was kind of disappointing. All it was a heart rate monitor and a pedometer. Like, wow, that's it? That's all you did? You know, and this next generation is, well, and it's waterproof and it's got GPS. Well, okay, so the next generation has barometers, and it has a glucose detector, and it has a, you know, and you move.
Can you detect glucose from your wrist?
Theoretically, but yeah, there's all sorts of different technologies that they're going to continue to work on. I think to really.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if you could not just heart rate, but like blood pressure.
Yeah, that's another one that I believe that they think that you can do non-evasively.
Hmm.
So it's there's all sorts of stuff that they're trying to do, and I think that that's the big push on the devices.
Okay.
You know, is make it a health. It isn't like the iPhone was a misnomer. It wasn't a phone. It was a computer with a phone app. I actually think that they look at the Apple Watch as a misnomer as well. It's not a watch. It's something else, and I think that something else is primarily a health tracker.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but generally not, or clearly not a general purpose computer.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, you got notifications and you can reply to them, and I use Siri on my watch all the time.
yeah. I think that's the other big thing that's coming down the pipe, and I is that this idea of a side connection, something like as the Echo and Google Home continue to improve and build up and prove that that's a useful interface. Apple made an announcement this week. I'm going to jump around a little bit because it's apropos. Apple made an announcement this week that they're going to start allowing their employees to publish their AI research, which is a huge deal because they're currently the biggest company that has serious money being invested into AI research that doesn't publish, and it's been difficult for Apple. The belief is the justification that Apple is making is like, look, it's good for the community. We learn from other people's research. You learn from our research. We're all going somewhere together. It's high tide raises all boats. Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously, the secretest of our secret sauce we're going to keep internal, but we're going to allow employees to publish research so that all of us can work together, which is very high-minded. The reality of it is that it's really individually beneficial to the individual developers to
totally.
be publishing. They want to publish because it helps raise their value over time, and so they can get paid more and everything. And everybody in the industry will let them do that except Apple. And so they're having a retention and hiring issue
Oh,
because people don't want to work for them because they'll come up with something brilliant and then somebody else will get the credit for it developing it 6 months later. And
huh.
it's driving them nuts. So they're finally going to start allowing their employees to do that. But one of the big things that they're working on when it comes to artificial intelligence is this idea of like it's the same basic stuff that Google and Facebook and everybody else is working on, where it's like natural language comprehension and creation. They're working on so like having it be able to understand somebody talking to it and having it be able to talk back in an articulate way. They're focused
Yeah.
on doing all of their algorithms are optimized for GPUs, or so graphical processing units, as opposed to the FPGAs that Microsoft is using, or the dedicated hardware acceleration that Google's doing with TensorFlow. Like and GPUs are incredibly cheap because everybody buys the same one from NVIDIA. So there's a real cost advantage there, and they're doing cool stuff. I guess like one of the things that they're doing is they'll create these really sophisticated neural networks and they'll train them for like image processing, for
Oh, I heard
example.
about this.
And
Yeah, yeah.
they were talking about how their image set is like twice the size as everybody else's. So they get these really, really remarkably great results from this
Huh.
giant neural network. But the problem with the neural network is that it's like it's
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 giant.
it's gigantic. So what they do is they then have that neural network create specific inputs and outputs to train dedicated GPU based neural network that's lighter weight, and it will create the inputs and outputs for that quote unquote they call it they're calling it the little brother, the sibling network, and basically it's like it's all of the inputs and outputs are optimized to tune the network really, really quickly and specifically, so that what you end up with is this very lightweight neural network that is as effective at classifying as the parent one.
If I
And
remember correctly, like, help me if this sounds way too simplistic, but it was like essentially the the little brother neural network's only job is to guess what the big brother network
Yeah,
would
it's
say
exactly
it is.
that's exactly what
So
it
it
is.
doesn't have to do the processing. It just goes, I think it would be this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
like, it's close enough.
well, yeah, because you know, if we talk about pattern finding stuff, it's like basically
So
one
it
network.
reduces, it takes out all the noise,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly, and
Gotcha.
makes them run super efficient. So they were like bragging about how like they can go through photos twice as fast as Google can.
Well, how
And
come
like,
their image search is garbage
I don't
then?
know. I don't know why. This is what was so amazing to me reading all this. I was just like, why is all their stuff so bad right now? Then, like, I mean, it's
Like, you
good.
wouldn't have to publish if you just made the product.
I know. I
Uh,
don't understand what is going on with them right now. And I think, well, I honestly, I think I do understand. It's the fact that the best of the best will build something great at Apple and go, you know what? I don't get any credit for this. This doesn't help me in my career. And they leave. And so Apple does have some really amazing stuff that are,
yeah.
but they have
It's
a
just on the
small,
shelf.
yeah, and they have a small team who's not really doing anything right now and who's not building. And so this is part of their whole, we got to turn around, we got to change this department because this is too freaking important. And you know, because one of their big things is they want to be able to run these neural networks on the phones and on the watches and do the language processing and do a lot of
privacy concerns. They want it
right.
all on the device, and,
and
it's
they
faster.
and it's a lot faster, and they can do that, but it requires quite a bit of effort. And I don't know, it's really interesting what they're kind of some of the stuff they were talking about that they're doing and how good they are at doing it, especially when you look at like Apple and Facebook and the people that are way better, right? And seemingly way better. And I don't know. The one that still confuses me to this day is why is Siri so much better on my watch than it is on my phone? Like, I don't understand that. That is an incomprehensible idea to me. So
yeah, you know, it's funny. Now that I have a watch, I don't know, like, what would I use an Echo or Google Home for?
The only advantage to it is I really liked to be able to just be it stayed in my room so other people could use it, which was nice to control things in my room.
Okay.
That was a huge advantage. And the other one was that the whole always listening thing, like, I don't know, it was a little bit my watch isn't great at always listening. Hey Siri. Oh, it actually, wow, that was, okay. That was a bad example. It did a really good job that time.
Well, that's what I find. For me, it almost always gets it. So like I use the timer like all the time. Like when we put our kid or dog on timeout, and yes, we put them both in timeout. When I get done, I'll just, as I'm walking away, you know, I'll say the magic word and set a timer for a minute or two, and you know, works great. I use it to. What did I have the other day? I was like leaving the kitchen, and I had my hands were full, and I almost was like, oh, I should set this down and turn the light off. I was like, what am I doing? What a noob. And you know, just real quick, is there, turn off the kitchen lights, boom, done. I use it for all of those like tiny little tasks. I wish that it would connect to my Apple TV so I could tell it to play a certain app. Doesn't do it. That would be super convenient. Just putting it out there. Which I understand that Google can do that if you have a Chromecast. But
yes, that's true. I had the weirdest experience this week. I walked into my room. I still had the Google Home set up, so I was still using it to control my lights and everything. And I walked in, and I flipped the light switch in my room, which doesn't feel like that should be that big of a deal, except all of my outlets are attached to this light switch. So all of my phone, my PlayStation, my Google Home, my lights, like everything just instantly powered off. Like I just cut the power. And I was like, I haven't hit that light switch in like 4 years. Like, what just happened in my brain that I did that? Like, and
wow.
I did it like I've been doing it every day. It was so weird.
So question on that one. Are those all is your outlet? Is it just one of the outlets turns off and on with the light switch, or is it both?
I got 2 outlets in both the top. I got 2 actual physical, like, separate outlets on 2 walls, and then each one of them are a single gang. So they got the 2 outlets. Both outlets on the one that everything's plugged into turn off when you hit the light switch.
Both outlets on the. Okay, so there's 2 holes, right? I get single gang.
There's 2 plugs. there's 2 plugs on this one. Both plugs turn off.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Usually it's just one of the 2 outlet holes. Never mind.
I know. Drives me
Weird.
crazy. I know.
Well, I mean, you know the other way you can get around it, which you're a renter, so you probably shouldn't. But you just go into your light switch and you can make a quick change.
Hey.
Put a plate there instead. You're done.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, Pebble's done. Apple's doing some AI stuff to try to stay ahead. It sounds interesting. They should just come up with some products. Just do it.
Speaking of right? Come on, Apple. Speaking of artificial intelligence, so Amazon.
What a big creepy brother.
I know. Amazon did something kind of cool this week. They announced a new store.
I love Amazon. I
know. They announced a new store that is it's on their campus in Seattle. It's currently open only to Amazoners, people who work for the company. Their namesake? No, I don't think so.
Okay, good.
Amazonians.
Probably call themselves the tribe or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the team. And then
the Bez heads.
The Bez heads. Yeah, but it will be opening up to the public later at some point.
Like early next year, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but this is the basic idea. You have a phone app that is, like connected to your Amazon app, and you open it up and it's got like a little QR code on the screen. You walk into the store, and as you walk through the turnstiles, you scan the app, and so it connects to you. And then you walk around the store, you pick stuff off the shelves and whatnot, you put it in your bag or you take it in your hand, doesn't matter. You walk out of the store with it, and then your Amazon account gets charged for everything that you picked up. And if you're sitting there saying, wait, but how does it know? What if I picked it up and put it back down? What if somebody else picks it up? Like how does it know? And the answer is artificial intelligence and a whole machine vision and a whole slew of other sensor technologies. Basically, they got cameras everywhere watching everything all the time, and they're constantly tracking you and where you are. And then they've got sensors in the shelves, it sounds like. They maybe not, kind of depends on where you're grabbing, but they're able to sense how much of what you're picking up. And they know that you're there grabbing it because it's you. They can watch you with their machine vision stuff. Yeah, and then so when something gets picked up, it sees that you picked it up, and then it just adds it to your list, and then you walk out. Bada bing, bada boom. Cashierless. It's like self-checkout on steroids. I was listening to a Freakonomics podcast, and they had an episode on the guy who invented the original self-checkout machine, and they were talking about complaints of self-checkout and how some people like it. I like it. I'm a big fan. I always take it if I can get it. Other people hate it because it's difficult. It doesn't work that well. It's, and there's all sorts of stupid stuff that people are making that the government is ruining it, especially in California. You can't buy alcohol at it. So you'll get up there, you'll have like a 6-pack, and it'll tell you, oh, sorry, you can't buy that. You're like, you gotta be kidding me. And then once you get out of line, go into the other line, or it'll ask you if you want bags, since we don't have bags in California anymore. And it's just like, I don't want to why are you making this so difficult on me? And they're ruining the experience again, because all of a sudden it went from being this very, very fast, it was the fastest way to get out of the store, to, especially if you kind of know what you're doing, to it's like they're slowing it down with a bunch of interactions with other people. But this podcast, Freakonomics podcast, they pointed out that there is an example of self-checkout working really, really great, and everybody loves it. It's the best. And that example is Amazon, and how that's when you're on Amazon.com, it's effectively self-checkout because all of your information is already tagged up and tabulated. You basically just put the stuff in your cart, and then you click, okay, cool, and then you're done. It's that easy. And they're like, this is obviously what they're just trying to make that same feat in the real world. and to make it that convenient to buy things, that everything is like that. And the crazy part about it is that, like, that's where we are from a technology perspective. Like, all the things that Tesla and Google and all these companies are doing to try to make self-driving cars that keep track of stuff and understand what it is and where it is in real time, that's the same sort of technology that they're using, that Amazon's using here. The only difference is it's can you manage to steal from them? That's the big question. And that's the worst thing that can happen to them, as opposed to, you know, Google or Tesla, where people die if they mess up. But so it's a little bit of a lower bar for danger, so they can be a little more aggressive on saying, yeah, you know what, there's a certain amount of loss prevention that happens in every store. People lose, people steal all the time. And it's like 10% of like a store. They look at like 10% is all going to be losses. And Amazon's sitting there saying, hey, if we can keep it at that level, we just know where to set our prices, or we figure out what our loss rate is. We set the prices at that amount, and then you just go from there. That's how all stores deal with it. And the question is, can you keep your prices low enough to still be advantageous? Oh, also, you don't have to hire anybody.
What'll be interesting is, and this is eventually coming, where they'll start to have an idea of when things disappear or get stolen. Because it's hard. It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be interesting, right? Because it's all camera based. So in theory, when it's no longer on the shelf, they'll know about it.
Right.
And at the very least, like, they'll be able to tell at the end of the day how much they lost.
Right.
And they will know every single person who went into that store that day.
Right.
And it might take a while, but if you're a habitual thief, like, they could pin you down, right? And go, holy cow, every time this guy comes, something gets stolen. The numbers might be too big, too broad. It will work a lot more effectively if they'll know within the hour, because then they will really shrink down the sample set for that time. But it, in theory, could get to a point where they go, you know what, you're just too much of a security risk. We're good.
Yeah. Well,
extra trained cameras on this one.
I was gonna say, well, and that's the weird part, right? Is it's like you talk about stealing, but like, how do you steal? Because like you said, it knows when something gets picked up off the cart. So the only way to steal is to basically have it not know it was you. And
somehow think
you
put it back. That would be my, like, that's how I would, okay. Like magicians stand a chance at this.
Oh, you do like a little what's it called?
Sleight of hand?
Temple of the Lost Ark? No.
Oh, yes. When you got your bag of sand.
Yeah, exactly.
Got your empty box you trade it with.
Exactly. That's and then one of the things that I know that works pretty effectively on obscuring facial tracking actually is they'll build these hats that you put little LEDs on them, infrared LEDs, and basically makes your face this flashlight.
Yeah, but again, like, they're gonna know about that.
I know, that's the thing.
They'll know. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, it knows everybody who is in the store. So if you're that one person wearing it, it knows who you are.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's one of those things where it's like that. Yeah, you'd have to do it on your whole body, because it's not like it will probably.
Well, and you'd have to have that hat off and then turn it on once you're inside the store,
right?
Because even if you're just like the glow of the face, the second you swipe your phone, like, okay, it's tracking the glow of the face. I don't know.
Right. Well, or it'll track your whole body.
It's got the back of your head. It's got
it'll know.
You can't. I bet you find that it's super hard to steal from that store, though it will be an interesting challenge too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, now I want to try though.
Dude, you know they've set that out, right? Like, dude, try to steal from us. We'll give you a prize if you can.
Well, and that's the thing. And honestly, just so think about this and I can understand what they're trying to do here, because the whole idea is,
if you can prove it, you could have it.
The rumor was that Amazon wanted to create like a giant chain of like stores. That was early in the week was. Amazon came back and were like an emphatic no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're absolutely not trying to do that. Which everybody was like, okay, they're keeping it a secret, guys. But even if they're not, even if they're just trying to prove this technology, it totally makes sense as a highly valuable technology because it does two things. Number one, yes, the cost is you got to put a bunch of cameras and computers in every single grocery store. Like there's going to be setup and work take involved in doing that. But the big advantage here is there's no cashiers, and cashiers cost money, and which is and cashiers tend to be quite well paid and have benefits, and they've got unions. Like there's a big cost savings if you can get rid of the need for cashiers. But the other
it's the margins in grocery stores are not huge. So
right.
If you can even just cut 10% of the jobs, cool.
Well, and how great would it be if you could reduce losses from thieves?
That's huge.
From
that in itself is worth it.
From 10% down to 2%,
Yeah, and that means you can actually have more people on the floor helping customers and
right.
keeping things stocked and keeping it clean, which adds more value.
Yeah.
To it. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I have this problem with Home Depot. Like and my big issue is I like to go shopping at like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. So they close at 9. I get that I'm not setting myself up for success here. It's a very different story at 6 a.m. because you walk in, there's like no people, and there's like literally people in orange aprons standing in every single aisle, just chomping at the bit to help you, which is fantastic, which is when I should do my shopping apparently. But anyways, I go at night and I'm like, dude, I'll walk aisle after aisle and not see a single person there to help me. Like, this is annoying. Or like last night I was looking up some plumbing stuff and the guy was like, I don't know, I'm not the plumber, but here we are. Let's go look. Like, great. I could do that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the honesty, but it's not actually helpful. And, but anyways, you can have more people like that, which would actually help the customer experience.
Yeah. And I think, and so you could see why Amazon would want to be in on this, why they'd sit there and go, this is good technology. Because if we can sell this package, that's good money. If we can start these stores, that's good money. If we can, what we want to be is we want to make this super convenient. And Walmart, you're on notice.
Yeah, actually, that's the trick. Like, how well does this thing scale? Okay, I can do a small grocery store.
Yeah.
Can you do a superstore? Can I track all of that? Which the answer is probably yes, but like how well? Obviously, you can brute force it, but how well does it scale would be an important question that they're trying to answer, and they're answering it by like actually physically doing it. Which is cool.
Yeah, it is really cool, and it's a neat little computer.
Man, so much for the end of brick and mortar, huh?
I know, right? Well,
these guys, you just like they have this love-hate relationship with brick and mortar. Because
destroy all bookstores. Open up bookstores. What are you doing? Yeah.
Well, it's like here we've got the Echo. Just literally say I want diapers, and they'll show up. But
well, it's funny you talk about like this is at the risk of getting too political. The new oh man, what is he? The guy he was the CEO of Hardee's in Carl's Jr.'s. He just got hired at Trump. Carl's Jr. I got this. I can.
Okay.
Let's. What's his name? What's his name?
I can help you.
Trump's pick for Secretary of Labor.
Labor.
Okay, that's if we could really give me his name, that would really help.
Name.
Oh my gosh. Okay, just I hate you, The Atlantic.
What are you gonna say about him?
It's so annoying. Anyway, whatever. So, but he's like one of his big things is he's opposed to a high minimum wage, and which of course the left hates him for, because that was a big platform point for them, was that no, we want to go with the $15 minimum wage.
Puzzler, does that sound familiar?
That does sound familiar. But his whole deal,
Andrew Puzzler.
There we go. And his whole deal as the leader of Hardee's / Carl's Jr. was like, look, if you make it too expensive to have these people, we just won't have these people. We'll just replace it with automation. And it's like when you start to put these,
Wasn't
like,
it the former? Was that him? I thought it was the former CEO of McDonald's who like.
he said it too. Like they're
Okay.
all on the same page. They're like, look, we're very much coming up on the tipping point where it is cheaper to have these automation technologies for that part than it is to for like the customer interface than it is to have actual people there. And you think about like how cool would it be to be able to go into McDonald's? Like, okay, just hear me out here. You walk into McDonald's, you walk up to the screen or whatever, and you're like, yo, I want a burger. And then you walk over to just a thing full of French fries. You pick out as many French fries as you want, and then you walk over, you sit down, and then like a drone flies over and drops your Whopper at your table. And
Whopper.
they just have
Nice.
I didn't even realize I did that. And they just it comes with a bit of a tax. It's one of those things where it's like you could just imagine this like world where it's like, no, we just know how much you've gotten. And if you want anything specific, you tell us. You tell our computer sensor, and it's all good. We'll work that out. And now we don't need anybody to be doing.
It's like the A&W where you sit down and you get the little button that you push. I want this. You just tell it, and then it comes to you.
Exactly. And it's like, imagine chips at like a Mexican restaurant where you order, and then they have like the little chip bar.
That was always my hope with the Microsoft Surface, is that it would be helpful with chips when you ran out. You would just like tab more chips, and they would just show up.
Yeah, that'd be great. But that's
when I run out of chips.
I know, but that's why I love those stores with the chip, like the Mexican restaurants with the chip bar was the best, because like they just have a whole tub of chips, and you get out as many chips as you want. And you like normally they have like tiny little containers that can hold like 4 chips in them, and so you go back a lot, but you can go back as much as you want, which is why I like it. And you could just see them being able to just keep track of that. Be like, and they'll just tell you, oh yeah, you spent this much money. There's this tap room in Santa Cruz where you have like a wristband, and they literally just have like 100 different beers. Not 100. It's probably close to like 30.
Approximately close enough.
A bunch. I rounded up. Now
a bunch. Now you're running way down. But anyways,
but you get a glass, and you walk up, and you have like they give you a little wristband, and it just has a little RFID in it. You bump it, and then it says, "Oh, cool!" It keeps track of how many ounces you've poured, because after you've poured 36 ounces, you walk back up to the front and you go, "Hey, can I get 36 more ounces?" And the dude goes, "Yeah, you're still sober, so you can go get some more." And then just now imagine this is a bar. You walk into the bar, and it knows you're 21 because of your beard, and but it keeps track of you and who you are and where you are. So you just walk up to the bar, pour as much beer as you want. It'll have like a little indicator next to it that says, yeah, this is how much beer you've had. This is how much money you've spent. And, but there's no other interaction involved. And this place,
some people would argue that's a loss, not a gain.
Yes. Yeah, because I know we all like waiting on a bartender late at night. That's the best part of going to a bar.
Well, maybe like a restaurant or something, not necessarily a bar.
Well, I've always thought with a restaurant that you'll never get rid of everybody. Not because you can't, but because, like you said, there is that personal touch, where I think what you really want is 2 maitre d's that walk the floor and just have conversations. Their whole thing is just guest relations. Whereas, like you said, you've got a table that has sensors in the chip basket and in your soda glass and everywhere. So they know when you're out of soda, they know when you're out of chips, and there's somebody in the back who runs out, and all the automatically made food, they run out and they drop it off. And the maitre d's job is just to walk around and say, hey,
level 11.
Yeah, exactly. And the maitre d's job is just to walk around and be like, hey, I hope everything's going great tonight. Is there anything extra I can do for you? And
how are those chips?
Yeah, exactly. Are they perfect? And I just think that, like you said, some people will call that a loss, and you'll figure out how many people you need to have. Where that's
But
their
those people are
job.
probably not at McDonald's or wherever, and you'll have different types of restaurants.
Exactly. And
I gotcha.
and for
I
me,
gotcha.
when it comes to a bar, I either want to be alone and angry and sad and drunk, or I want to be just have as much beer as possible.
And I think when shopping, I would much rather have less cashiers and get them out on the floor.
Right.
Answer questions.
Yeah.
And do things like that.
Totally
That to
agree.
me is like totally better experience. Even if you have the same people, that's okay with me. Or you get rid of all your cashiers and you hire one or two experts or something.
Yeah.
And like actually know what they're talking about when it comes to plumbing. I'm not bitter at all that I have to go back again to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about. Literally, that's costing me time and money. That was super annoying. So right now I have a shower with the PEX pipe that goes to nothing. It's just hanging out there because I don't have the right. So how about this for weird? I'm just gonna just give me 30 seconds. Okay, 2 minutes here to just rant for a little bit.
All right.
So I bought this little elbow thing that you screw the elbow into a what do they call it? A scab piece of wood, kind of in between to whatever. So your shower head, right? It's got the little bar that goes into the wall into a 90-degree elbow that then is connected to a pipe. Well, I have one of those. It's a shark bite, goes to PEX pipe thing. And then I was going to connect my shower elbow, the part that actually comes out, to this 90-degree. It's not a coupling. They call it a drop elbow. Anyways, they're both 1/2 inch. I'm at home. I go to thread it on to check it. Does not thread on. Excellent. Great. So I go to the store and they're like, well, they must be different thread types. Like, oh, okay.
I didn't know that was possible. Thanks.
Fair, that's the thing. Great. He goes, yeah, there's like 3 different types of thread things. Like, oh, well, I knew there was rough and fine, but okay, whatever. So we're trying to find the right one. Can't find it. Here's the crazy part. I grab a piece of galvanized pipe that has male and female on both sides of it. The galvanized pipe screws into my 90-degree elbow, and I can screw my shower head onto it. What? Mind blown.
All right.
I'm going, okay, I'm at a loss now. And tried multiple elbows, multiple shower heads. There's something about it. They don't line up, but somehow the way they make galvanized, it's all good. Works with everything. And then I didn't have a galvanized elbow that would screw into the wall, because you have to screw it into something, otherwise it moves around, and that's a problem. You, in theory, could just get a little strappy and put it on there, but they still, I don't know. I just super annoying. And the guy who was helping me was like, I don't know, that's weird, huh? Like, sure.
Yeah,
okay.
That's frustrating.
Like, there are multiple solutions to this. I just don't know where to look. And anyways, it was like 8:30 at night, and I was tired, and we still didn't have water on at our house, so I went home. Rant over.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, I'll tell you what. I have got a dinner appointment that I have to go to, and probably
holy cow.
Yeah, we're right up against it. So I'd say we do one more story.
Okay. I'm interested in yours.
All right, cool. So
mine, just real quick, we'll have a video of, it's a century-old technology used to make gas-powered engines more efficient. It's a cool video. It's essentially, it was this concept that was from really, really long ago, but they didn't have the technology or the computer processing to make it happen. And now they do. And they're going to start putting it into vehicles, makes them like 30% more efficient. It's awesome. Whoa. Check it out.
Let's watch
the article. FurloBros.com/272. Your turn.
So, thank you. So, so there's a VR party starting. Pretty exciting. There's an organization that is being formed. It's called the Global VR Association. It is being joined by the likes of Google, HTC, Oculus, and Sony. And if you're thinking, hey, that's just about everybody that's a big deal in VR right now, you're right. And the whole purpose of this organization is to facilitate communication amongst the people who join it, so that they can help start to build standards. There are two notable groups that are not involved in this organization yet. One is Valve, who I keep talking about as like they want to be the operating system of virtual reality. They originally they own a bunch of the intellectual property that HTC's devices works on. They do all the software for it up to this point. They've now extended their software to work with Razer's Open VR thing. They're working with the Oculus right now. They're trying real hard to push the limits of what, push the boundaries, work with more systems. And then the other deal is the other big one that's not in it is Microsoft. And they've obviously got their whole AR initiative and their VR stuff. Yeah, but the big idea here, and we've talked about this, and this is kind of what everybody wants, is what they ultimately, the hope is that VR headsets become sort of like monitors, where they all need, like, they got 6 degrees of freedom, right? So you got your different rotations, and then your forward, backwards, left, right, up, down. So spatial tracking and rotational tracking. And how the device achieves that, whether it's doing it with cameras built into it, or if it's got the sensors, the light sensors like HTC, or if it's got cameras like Sony and Oculus, it doesn't really matter. What is important is knowing where the headset is in space. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of it is obviously output, putting how do we create a standardized video output that all these kind of work on, so that one piece of software can work with these different hardwares. And definitely have that feeling right now that we're at the point where it's time to start to coalesce and work towards standards. And everybody getting together and doing that. It's
cool.
I know. It's huge. It's awesome. It's very good news. I think honestly the reason why they're doing this right now is because they're looking at Microsoft and thinking, oh, that company could definitely come in like a wrecking ball and just set standards, and we would have no choice but to do what they're doing. So this is the European Union coming against the Americas, and trying to put together enough alliances where they have some sort of a collective sway against anything that Microsoft does that they collectively object to. I think that's what this is all about. And Valve, the reason why they're not getting involved yet is because they're like, it doesn't really affect us yet. We're sort of doing this anyways. We'll see you on the other side, guys.
Interesting.
It's definitely, as we're moving forward and it's becoming an industry, people are really getting excited and kind of accepting that this is going to go somewhere. We'll start to see the end result of all this tech relatively quickly.
Oh, it's exciting.
I know. I love it.
I love it too. Awesome. All right. That's what we got for you.
Yes.
So next week, we'll talk more Star Wars, of course, and other tech stuff. And we're going to go from there. So everybody, gracias. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And let's see, this is episode 272. So check out all the show notes there. If you'd like to get all the show notes sent directly to you, you can sign up at that same page. And we're doing a giveaway this week. We're giving away a Google Home. Matthew's reviewed it. We'll have that video in furlobros.com/272. Plus, you can go to furlobros.com/giveaways/Google Home. I'll have a link to that as well. All you got to do is give us your email address, and it could be yours. And if you share it, you get more votes. And it's awesome. So thanks for listening. And let's see here. I am James Furlo, and my stargazing brother for another rotation around the sun is Matthew Furlo. And we will talk next time.